All right. Well, welcome to Veritas Group's webinar, Three Things Fundraisers Must Do This Summer. I'm Rebecca Huron. I'm the Director of Content Marketing and Learning here, and I'll be working behind the scenes just to support Jeff and Diana as they present today. Before I pass it on to them and let them introduce themselves, I want to just make sure that everyone here knows how to use our webinar system. So just because of the number of people that we have on today, which we've got hundreds, which is so exciting, it's going to be really helpful to us if you use both the chat and the Q&A box over the course of the webinar. So if you have a comment or want to tell us what your favorite summer destination is, you can go ahead and put that in the chat. And we would really love it if everyone would introduce themselves, where you're from, what organization you're with, and you can answer Jeff's question about where you want to go this summer or where you are going this summer in the chat. And then there's a Q&A box that should be on your toolbar at the bottom of the screen. And that's where we would love for you to put your questions that come up over the course of the webinar. We will get to as many of those as possible at the end. And that will just help me make sure that we're managing that since we have so many of you today. We will also be sending a link to the recording of this webinar as well as a copy of the slides tomorrow. So be on the lookout for that email. There'll be a link in the email that will send you to a landing page where both of those items will be. And so you can reference back to that information if you want to revisit something. I think that takes care of all of my housekeeping, and just I'm loving all of the updates in the chat here. So please keep sending in where you're from and who you are. We love to see all of that. But I'm going to pass it over to Jeff for his introduction and to get us started.
All right. Well, in the spirit of summer, even though it's like 60 degrees here in Philadelphia, I'm wearing my short sleeves, you can see, just so that we get in the spirit of summer. All right, I'm Jeff Schreifels, and I'm principal and owner of Veritas Group, and I've been doing this for a long time. And actually, Diana and I have known each other for a very long time as well. And I love this work, so much so that we started Veritas almost 2 decades ago, really to help major gift officers, mid-level officers do their job better so that they could form deeper and authentic relationships with donors, which in turn would bring in more revenue. That's all we're about, is helping you do your job better. And that means then donors will be served better and your organization will have more net revenue for all the great things that you do in your mission. So this is going to be fun because there's going to be a lot of things around planning and the things that you can do this summer to help set you up for success for the rest of the year. Diana?
Okay, well, I'm Diana. Probably figured that part out. I'm also in the Philadelphia area. I've been on the Veritas team for just over 10 years. And before that, I had about 32 years, about and 32. Vague and precision. Sorry about that. In the nonprofit space, I was a frontline major gift officer, and I manage major gift officers and all the stuff in fundraising we do. I'm a runner, although I have to say truthfully, lately I've been a lapsed runner. I need to get off my butt and get running. I have a dog that I love. I read, and my husband and I have a lot of friends that we entertain. So that's kind of who I am. And I'm really excited about talking about this. And I have to say, before we go further, every time I read the title of this, all I can think of is, I know what you did last summer. Like it's bad, but it's going to be good because we know what you're going to do this summer.
Yes. Awesome. All right. Okay. So before we get started on the webinar, I just wanted to share a little bit about Veritas. Some of you on the call might be pretty familiar with us, but for those who aren't, we are passionately relationship focused and grounded in a data-driven approach. And this dynamic is critical to the system, structure, and strategy that we have found to be successful in mid, major, and plan giving programs. Something that Richard and I recognized during our time in the direct response world is that data is extremely powerful. So when we found that most major gift programs were missing this critical piece, we knew that data had to drive our strategy and our approach. And over the last decade, we've had the opportunity to work with thousands of major gift officers, mid-level officers, and plan giving officers, many on a weekly basis through our consulting work. So we know firsthand how this approach has helped organizations of all sizes and focuses create authentic donor relationships that lead to a stronger donor pipeline and greater net revenue. And also the lack of data that I was talking about, that's really was concerning to us. And it still amazes us how many nonprofits do not adequately consider the data piece of this work. And that's why we've worked so hard to ground our approach in objective fact, not just our opinion. We've formed our recommendations through insight from analysis of millions of donor records and working with thousands of fundraisers and leaders over the years. And we've gotten to work with some pretty phenomenal organizations over the years that have helped us learn and develop that strategy. We believe that the summer season is an undervalued time of year where you can make a significant stride in your relationships with key donors if you have a strategic approach to your communication plan. So with all of that in mind, our promise to you is this: if you follow our advice today, you'll break down some obstacles that are keeping you from connecting in a more meaningful and impactful way with your donors during the summer months. Now, when we think of planning, there are 3 times of the year that we look at: the start of the calendar year, once your accounting is finalized, during the summer, and for year end. Now, some of these timeframes may shift a bit for you depending on your fiscal year, but generally, these are the key times to be thinking and planning. Summer planning in particular is an important time because you're getting yourself prepared for that year end. You don't need to be going in-depth year-end giving plans at this point, but there are a number of things that you can do to ensure that you're set up for success during the most significant giving season of the year. We often hear from people that they don't think planning is worth their time, but you really can't afford not to plan. If you don't take the time to focus on planning now, then you're missing a huge opportunity to set yourself up for success at year end. Now, there are a number of reasons why you need to plan. You need to know how you're trending with revenue expectations. You do not want to wait until November or December to realize that a donor who usually gives in April hasn't given yet this year. You also may have some significant changes to what you expected. So you might have a donor you thought would give $10,000 might not be realistic because they can only give $2,000 because of a business downturn. There are a lot of things that could come up in the first half of the year that you will want to account for before it's too late. And just for a minute, put yourself in your manager's shoes for a second. If you're a frontline fundraiser, your manager is, they're going to bed worried that we're not making our revenue goals. That's their thing, right? They're all worried about, are we going to make our revenue? But if you really are proactive and you're staying in front of it and you're talking to your manager about where your donors are on an ongoing basis, you can help them sleep better at night, and it'll make your job easier because they're not going to be bugging you all the time because they know that you're being proactive about how things are going with your donors. So this is a great time right now to look at what did you expect from your donors and where are they right now? Because there might be some, and I can guarantee you, there will be some donors that are behind where you thought they would be. Now is the time to have a proactive strategy for those donors. And you need to know where you stand with donors and where you need to prioritize your efforts. As you approach year end, you'll have a lot on your mind and on your plate. And if you don't have a plan outlined now, then you'll lack focus and have no clear goals or steps to follow. If you are unable to focus and don't know the direction you should be going, it's going to be incredibly difficult to make the progress you need to have. And if you get to year end without a focus, you won't have time to put those things in order. You need to think about where you might need to collaborate internally as well. You may need some special marketing materials or specific types of stories from your program staff. You don't want to wait until October to start asking for this. If you start coordinating early with the other departments, then you'll not only gain their appreciation, but you'll also be ahead of the game for your year-end strategy. Now, before we dive into the 3 strategies we're highlighting today, I want to give you an overview of the larger approach we take to summer planning so that you have things in context. So, first, you must know where you are from a revenue perspective. By taking the time to plan, you'll have strategic times throughout this year to ensure you're paying attention to how your donors are giving. Some donors may not have given what you expected, like I talked about before. Others might be giving more. You need to know how donors are trending against your expectations, especially as you progress towards year end. Here are some things to be really asking yourself. How much are my caseload donors giving compared to their revenue goals? Am I on track? You should know exactly how your caseload is performing against goal and against last year. Have you communicated that to senior management on donors that have greatly exceeded their goals and those who may be behind goal? Now is the time to have those conversations. Another thing to ask yourself, do I know why some donors are not making their goals? You will be asked this by your boss, obviously, so you need to have an answer for every donor that is behind goal or that you know for a fact they will not make goal. The only reason you would have to be concerned is if you haven't been working your plan. If you've been working your plan, you don't worry. You don't need to worry. Donors' lives change, but you need to know their story. Every donor has one. And if you don't know it, you really need to find out what it is. In other words, if you work your plan, that's all you can do, right? That's all you have control of. Other things in the donors world, you have no control over. All you have control over is to work the plan that you'd set out for them. Now, given where the giving is on your caseload to date, what is going to happen revenue-wise? It's good at this time in the year to predict where you think you'll actually end up at the end of the year. Then communicate that upline. I always believe in over-communicating. It shows everyone that you're being proactive. Are there 2 or 3 donors, since you have properly stewarded and cultivated them, who would be able to make a significant investment in your organization? What do you have to do between now and the end of the year to solicit a significant gift from one of those donors? Perhaps it's only one donor, but there is someone on your file that, if challenged, will rise to the occasion. So ask yourself, who is that donor? Now, make any necessary adjustments to your caseload. You may have some donors who need to be removed from your caseload for a variety of reasons. If you've been staying on top of the qualification process, then you'll also likely have some new donors to add into your caseload. Summer planning is a great opportunity to also revisit your 12-month touchpoint plan. You may have learned some valuable pieces of information about your donors' passions and interests over the last few months, which means you can start adjusting their plans to be more meaningful and engaging. And here's some things to look out for. Are there things you know about the donor that you didn't know before and could incorporate into the plan? Maybe you learned that the donor has a particular program interest or has a child graduating from college or getting married. All of these present you with opportunities to create a more meaningful and personal plan for the donor. Are there things in your organization is doing or has created that could be good to include? Maybe there's a new campaign coming up or a recent program update. And if appropriate, you can incorporate those into your plan as well. Where do you want to go with this donor? If this is a donor you have had trouble engaging, maybe build in some ideas and strategies for how to connect. Are there special volunteer opportunities you can invite the donor to, for example? Once you've taken the time to review what you know about your donors and what may need to change, you can then really start developing some really meaningful touch points that will strengthen the relationship with the donor. This is a good time to go do some research, learn more about your donors, and see how you can move the donor relationship forward in the coming season. So what do we mean by developing these touch points? Well, we'll get into this a little later in the webinar, but it's safe to say that once you get into the fall season, you really won't have much time, most likely, to find good articles, get stories from program, work with marketing, etc. So take time during the summer months to do this. Identify some great articles, blogs, marketing materials, program updates that you can sprinkle into your plan, which you could all have already reviewed to delight and surprise the donor. Figure out what you'll need from other departments and get on their radar now. Once the fall comes, you need to be 100% focused on your donors with all the and you're going to be busy with meetings. So make sure not only to have your plan together, that you're actually done the legwork on the touch points before you get into the busy season. And then you want to identify ways to set yourself apart. Your donors are about to enter a time of year where they're going to be bombarded with requests for financial support. They're likely going to be overwhelmed and possibly even tuning organizations out because of all that noise. That's why you need to set yourself apart with some meaningful ways to cut through that noise. You may want to take some time to engage with donors you can't visit with during the winter months. Connect with your marketing team on some unique materials you can create in the months ahead. Whatever it is, take some time to creatively think about ways you can surprise and delight your donors in the coming season. So here are some ideas on how to set yourself apart. Visit your snowbirds. Almost every MGO I talk to laments how they can't get in front of their donors because many of them are either in Florida or Arizona from November to April. Well, summertime is the season to sit down with them. Many donors on your caseload that have a vacation home, if being properly managed, if you've properly managed that relationship, should be eager to see what is happening in your organization. I know many MGOs who've created solid relationships with their donors who vacation in warmer weather in the winter, and their donors welcome them to fly down, visit, and solicit them. Engage a donor in a completely different way. I mean, you may have found it difficult to get to a donor to come visit your organization or get them out for coffee or lunch. Summer offers so many activities. Take those donors that are hard to see and ask them to do something different with you. For example, take them to an event of another organization that you know that they care about, like a walk or a ride. Invite them to an outdoor festival or movie along with a group of donors. What you are doing here is trying to spark a new interest or approach the donor in a new way that you haven't tried before. And commit to learning something new about your job or your donors. Richard and I have often encouraged major gift officers to attend high-quality conferences or try online classes about major gifts that will enhance their skills. I also suggest to MGOs that they find out at least one new bit of information about all of their A-level donors. It could be learning more about his or her business, a hobby, or specific interests outside of their work. Whatever it is, commit yourself to learning something new about them. Make sure you record it in the database. You can then use that information for your personal calls, notes, and other communication throughout the rest of the year. And get out into the field and start collecting stories about those you and your donors serve. Take the time this summer to get involved in your mission. Many times I hear MGOs say that you just don't have the time to get out and find those stories. But now is the time to do this. Gather those stories, videos, and photos, and inspire your donors with them. Secondly, go interview your donors. A few MGOs I've worked with have conducted video interviews with their donors and asked them a few questions about why they give, what inspires them. Not only does it help the donor engage more with the organization, but it also allows other staff to see how their organization is making an impact on donors' lives. And we all know this is a key to building a culture of philanthropy. We'll dig into this strategy more as well, but we want to take time to be bold in your planning. No matter how small your organization is, you likely have a donor in your major gifts program who could give transformationally. Likely more than one, but it takes time to get there. Start thinking about which donors could make this kind of impact and create special plans and strategies to move them in that direction.
Thanks, Jeff. That's a lot. And we all know from you all, it's a lot. Remember, you're going to get this webinar. You can go back over, listen, you'll see the PDF. So don't stress out. The first strategy we want to focus on is the summer check-in and caseload refresh. So this is a time where you're really able to make adjustments, whether you have a June fiscal year end or not. If you're on a January to December, April to March, July to June, you get the point. This is still a good time to take a step back. If it's regardless of your fiscal year, remember it's half the year from the donor perspective because they're functioning on a calendar year no matter what your fiscal year is. So that's why it's so important to take a step back and see where the giving is. And we're talking year over year. There's the fiscal year over year, but you want to be paying attention from the donor perspective, calendar year to calendar year. So you're not caught off guard because of a change in fiscal years that you missed that they skipped a whole calendar year because of the way your fiscal years work. So that's why this is so important in that regard. First is review all the donors on your portfolio who haven't given in 13 to 24 months. So these are people who are really lapsed. Most of them likely should not be on your portfolio any longer unless they've given significantly in the past. And you know why they have lapsed and you have a reason to believe they'll come back giving this year or near term. Or they have super tremendous capacity and there's just this depth of relationship with the donor. So you don't want to discount somebody for a 1 or 2 year blip, right? But we don't want you to hold on to donors either. If you know that the donor's interests have changed, it's okay to release them. And this can be a very freeing thing to kind of bless and release, if you will. So you want to review each donor and meet with your manager to go over the list. Do a yes, no, maybe list, and then go back to the maybes and try to justify why they should take up your time. Because remember, your time is valuable and you need to focus on donors who want to hear from you and make a difference to your organization. Because if you're doing this, you're not doing that, right? So if you're chasing after people who have made it clear they're no longer interested, those hours spent there could be better spent with a donor who wants to be engaged. Next, review all the donors who have not given in the last 12 months. So first, it's the 13 to 24. Now you want to see if there's anybody in your group that they skipped the last 12 months. And again, it might be, so we're here in the middle, almost the middle of 2024. Maybe you need to say, did they skip the calendar year 2023? Keep that in your mind. Always keep the calendar year reference in your mind as well as your fiscal year. Now, look to engage these people to, get a high confidence level that you'll receive a gift this year because they're back in the game, they're responding again. If you have some donors that will not give in the next 12 months, you can either put them in your C tier category, because we talk about tiering in A, B, C, A with the people you're working the most with, the highest economic potential, and C would be the lower end of that. And you're keeping them because you think they will give again in the future. But the difference is if you move them to your tier C, the amount of energy you're going to put into following up on them is different than if they're functioning as a tier A donor, where you're really laser focused on all that. You want to vet all the potential additions to your caseload. While it can get tricky, this is where you need to compare your currently managed donors' giving goals with these potential new sets. So you want to, if you're going to swap in and out, you want to be sure that you're not swapping out a $25,000 donor for a $2,000 donor. I realize that's common sense, but sometimes you can get so into the weeds, you can't actually see some of the detail. So we want to make sure you're paying attention to that. I did see something pop up about tiering, and yes, we have things on tiering, and we can pop a white paper into the chat at some point here. Rebecca, I'm sure she's in the background. When she hears the stuff, she's popping it into chat. Okay. Now, again, if you're not able to replace the income from your new donors quite yet, you need to communicate to your manager. Jeff already talked about that. This is so critical. What you do not want is leadership to be merrily going along on an assumption the revenue is coming in and making actual decisions that commit the organization when things have changed. Mm-hmm. You're giving a gift to leadership when you're just being honest. This is out of your control what a donor does. It is in your control to report what's happening. So do what's in your control, and it makes a big difference for the whole team. Also, you want to create a strategy for any donor that was newly qualified that you've done that first part. You've gotten to two-way engagement. So now you need to create an actual strategy. So say you're replacing 10 donors that you had been working with, but their giving has dropped or they've become non-responsive with new donors who have been qualified. You want to spend I'm going to think about the next 30 to 60 days, particularly in the summer, to reach out and have a way to connect with them. Try to get a face-to-face meeting if you can. I just talked to a gift officer this morning, and she said, does the face-to-face have to be in person? I said, well, I think COVID's ended that requirement. You could do a Zoom meeting, but do try to get a Zoom. Phone conversations are great too. But, if you can go face-to-face, that's best. Zoom next, phone conversation. So, don't write it off, but don't give yourself an ulcer if they don't want to meet with you face to face, right? So you want to focus on anything you can do there. And you want to communicate all the changes once you've completed your cleanup. So donors removed, donors added, goals adjusted, that kind of thing. I know this sounds redundant, but it's so important. I'll keep saying it. Any change to your caseload has to be communicated up to leadership and updated in your CRM. Not that you just replace donors on your caseload and you have updated goals. You need to communicate why. You need to know the story of why you're doing what you're doing. That action on your part also builds confidence in your leadership that when you're saying these things, you're saying it from a place of knowledge, not a place of fear or I wish, I hope, right?
Exactly.
That way they trust you going forward. I mean, this is why sometimes gift officers are not trusted, is they're not telling the whole story. They know it, but they might not be saying it. So no forgetting, no hiding, no withholding information. I'll try not to bring that up again, but I might, because that's how it is. So I know, again, Jeff and I are, talking fairly rapidly. We're both here in the Northeast. We tend to talk fast. Jeff is more measured than I am, but this is a lot and we recognize it's a lot. And that's why we want to make sure you have opportunities to go back over it. So changes you make now are not set in stone. In a month, if you learn something different, you want to change your plan. If in a month from now you learn your donor has lost their job, you're probably not going to ask for that $25,000 gift. You might still do it because, people still have capacity, but you're not going to do it in September if they told you in August that they lost their job. So keep thinking it. You should be regularly adjusting your plan as you learn more about the donor's interests, their preferences, new programs become available, all those kinds of things. It's not a set it and forget it. It's a set it. And because you have a plan, you can actually respond in the moment to what's happening in real time.
That's right.
And everything you do now will pay off when you hit the middle of September and everything takes off like a shot, that race to December 31st. The other thing is frankly, truthfully, if you have a plan, you won't be running and gasping for air at the end of the fiscal year. I've had more than one gift officer tell me, Diana, since I've started really creating a plan, when I get to October through December, I no longer have the anxiety I used to have. And I'm no longer trying to shove everything into 3 months that I should have been doing for the year. So that's what's critical there. So let's talk about focusing on your communication to donors during the summer months, because here we are at summer. It's a huge opportunity during this slower time to get face-to-face and learn valuable information. We tell ourselves a story that, our donors are all on vacation and they don't want to meet with me. Yes, I know donors may be away at some time for a few weeks, but it's a rare person that's gone all 3 months. So don't get that story in your head. Oh, it's summer. I'll just work at my desk. I don't have to actually communicate with a donor. That's not true. They are around. Their life might be less stressful, so they might actually pick up the phone. So think about that. So there are key elements to any kind of plan that you want to do. You want to make sure that the plan itself is as personal as it can be to the donor. Customized, personalized, whatever word makes sense for you. Mm-hmm. So the same touch doesn't go to all your donors. Or if you use a touch with maybe 20 donors, you've taken the time to customize it. So there's a note that you've put on it. There's something you've related it to the donor. I remember when we talked last December, you said blah, blah, blah. And so I wanted to get this to you. Like keep tying it, connect those dots, cookie crumb, whatever metaphor you want to use. And if you have not put your conversations in the database, this is where you're going to get hurt because you can't remember this detail. But if you have, you're about to send a touch point out, you open your database, yeah, that's right. And then you can customize that for that person. You also want to make sure it's relevant to the donor. So if they've told you they care about after school programs and you keep trying to talk to them about the breakfast program, you're missing each other. That's not to say you can never talk about the breakfast program, but focus on what they care about. And if you want to switch to a different topic, say, I know your main concern is the after school program. There's something came up with the breakfast things that we do that I think you might be interested. that contextualization makes even something that seems not relevant to the donor. You have to think and speak in a way that connects the dots for the donor. All right. So the other thing is you want to make sure you have a good cycle of cultivation that leads toward the ask, and then stewardship that reports back after a gift is received. And those reports can be formal or anecdotal. Too many times we get all anxious about, I need a formal report, I need finance to weigh in, and we just stop communicating. When you could just go to whatever it is, take a quick picture and say, hey, I'm working on the numbers in the background, but I want you to see this. That's the kind of things you want to think about. So what about planning for creativity? I am a big believer in blocking time for things. And the most common complaint we get during the year as well as summer is they just don't have the time. There's too much going on. And we get it that you're busy, but think of it as front end pain for year-long gain, right? You put the time in now, you're going to benefit from it. So the other piece to this is you want to know what resources you have, both internally and externally to your organization. I, for one, get a lot of email and a lot of good stuff through email. I'm local to the Philadelphia area, so the Pew Charitable Trust has incredibly robust emails communication on studies they've done. Why does this matter to me? I'm on the board of a legal clinic here in Philadelphia. So I have that coming to me and it goes right to an inbox for touch points because I go through that and I think as a board member, what might make a difference to some of the people I know who care about my clinic. So I'm using that. But my bigger point is it goes somewhere and then I have time on my calendar where I stop and look at my resources. So during the summer, if you can do 1 to 2 hours on your calendar several times a week to review your touchpoint plan and your inbox and your website and whatever else you have available, that'd be great. When I was a frontline fundraiser, last I was at university. Friday mornings were perfect. Pretty much every Friday morning of my career there, that's when I took time. My calendar was blocked, so nobody would grab that 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. That's why you want to block it on your calendar so that your time doesn't get gobbled up. If you've developed a good interest profile in your CRM, you can run a query and get the donors of a similar interest, and you can focus on touches that make sense for those donors. I just talked to an MGO that's looking to identify all the donors she manages that might have an interest in funding, supplying, or volunteering on a late summer back to school backpack project. Now, her CRM does not support the interest list, but she captured it in her Excel spreadsheet that she uses for a donor engagement plan. So she was able to find them fairly easily. So this is a time for you to think about categories of support for donors. It doesn't have to be restricted. We're not talking about seeking restricted giving, but you can have cost equivalency or other kinds of language where you want to talk giving to a project like your gift of $25,000 will help something like the after school program, the media education, environmental trail tours, election coverage, Bible distribution, asthma studies, whatever. The list can go on and on, but that's your point. You're trying to, donors are telling you what they care about. Are you able to capture that, pull that out later so you can make sure you do planning that aligns to what they care about. So the point is to do the work now so you can leverage all this energy and all this work once September hits or mid-September. So Jeff has up on the screen the different kinds of touch points. Actually, if you wouldn't mind going back for a second, we think about types, like we have types, a problem or gap statement, an ask, which is a solicitation, thank yous, personal connections, and that's about the donor. That's personal to the donor, like their child is graduating, that kind of thing. Or a YMAD, you made a difference. And you can see on the screen, there's a lot of things that fit within what we call the you made a difference. Impact reports, project reports, personal transformation stories where the life of one person or a kennel of dogs or whatever it is saved. Insider information, things that you're allowed to share, but like it's kind of like hot off the press, to use an old expression. I don't know how long we'll say that, Jeff. I don't know how long we have papers to be hot off the press, but anyway. Subject matter expert information or external validation, and we'll get into some of the details later. But just as a reminder, if you have a subject matter expert piece, it might be really weighty and long. It's not that the donor necessarily will read it. So maybe you send a link to it and you do a little 3 sentences to explain what that is. That the donor, what happens there is notice, wow, they really care about this. They care that I know. They might not read it all. That's not actually the point. The point is, are you giving them resources? And then the anecdotal. So let's jump into some of these. So this first one is an external validation. This is a news story on water issues and poverty to show the greater need. It's a story on water issues. This is from American Public Media studies they did before. And if you are in a city and you're dealing with people who have really struggling financially, they're the ones who need greater services. This kind of thing helps a donor understand why these things matter. So in this case, it was having to do with the water pipes, came problems, the renters, suddenly their water bills jumped. Mm-hmm. And this was the context. They weren't being bad. They weren't being terrible people, but this is a circumstance. Real point in my own life. My niece did not realize a toilet was running and it ran for a month. Guess what that did to her water bill?
Wow.
Her normal $60 bill was over $300.
Wow.
So that's what I mean. These are things you can grab as a window to help your donor understand the need that you're working with. This is a thank you card. So maybe you want to have a group, if you're working with mothers or seniors or children or whoever, and they're coming to a program, would they be willing to write a thank you note? If you're going to do this, I did see the question about how do you get program to help you, and we'll talk to that later. But if you're going to ask program to help you, provide the supplies, give them the cards and the envelopes, give them the crayons or the markers or the construction paper. Don't create a job for your colleague. If you want this to happen, help make it happen. And if possible, if you can be there, all the better. So you can participate in that thank you card festival. The next one is, we talked about insider information. This is an example from Colorado Public Radio. This is a few years ago, but they were going to be opening a new building. And so they were able to take this architect's rendering and get that to donors as sort of like a look-see to the future. Mm-hmm. And those people got to see that ahead of it going out in the newsletter and that. So the donors most close to them knew what was coming up. And this kind of insider thing is actually quite impactful. Maybe you get out of a meeting and you learn there's a new program and you can send an email to a few people. This next one, milestones, is really, I've been kind of laser focused on this lately, myself in my coaching with people. The milestones can be, there's examples there right on the screen: anniversary, union year, 10th scholarship recipient. It can be tied to the donor's giving. But this can be incredibly impactful. For example, you can identify 3 significant things that have happened over maybe the last 5 to 10 years and report that back to the donor. You have been giving since 2000. Here are 3 or 5 things that have happened that you have helped make come to pass, or changes that have happened because of your partnership. You don't have to have precision here. What you want to do, you want it to be genuine, but you don't have to be precise. But if someone's been giving to you for 25 years, they've had an incredible impact. Speak that back to them so they can be proud of what they've done. And you can also look at giving levels, whether it's they're hitting 10,000, 100,000, a million, or 10 million. Maybe they just did or they're about to. That's an opportunity to celebrate long-term impact. So think about that. And this is a time of year where you can run those lists. You can do comparative things. Who's just shy of 10,000? Who's just shy of a lifetime of 100,000? Take the time to do that, and then you can use that going forward. The next is using direct mail. Mm-hmm. And this is often underutilized by relationship fundraisers. Let me stress, and I don't know how, well, let me just say it bluntly. Do not take your donors out of direct response. Do not, unless the donor asked for it. If you do, you've actually taken them out of communication stream that they are used to. So they'll start missing some stories. They'll be missing impact. And these are things they used to get. And just take a second to realize that's how they became a mid or a major donor. They most likely came out of the direct response stream. So they don't think it's icky. They've been giving through it. So get that out of your head. It's a part of the overall communication plan. You can also leverage these if you work with your direct response team or agency to ways that maybe you can partner with them. Maybe your name can be put on the reply device. It can be mail merchant. That's an easy thing to do. Maybe they'll run the packages and they'll let you mail them with a handwritten note. That takes time, because remember, these lists get pulled maybe 2 to 3 months in advance. So just stop and think about the power of this tool that in major and mid-level, any relationship management, you might be ignoring. So I'll get off that soapbox. I get a little excited. Can you tell? The other thing you want to do is think about your internal resources. So I just talked about direct mail, but what about social media? What do you have on marketing materials? What do you have in blogs? and articles that are out there. Remember, just because something's on social media doesn't mean your donor's seen it. So it's okay for you to go to your Facebook page or your Instagram and pull something out and send it on. It could be an in case you missed it type thing. It could even be a newsletter that went out last month and you're reflecting as, oh, right, Jeff really cares about this. Well, go back to that story and say, hey, in case you missed it, by the way, Jeff, last month's newsletter covered this. I wanted to make sure it was in front of you. It's okay to do that. They're not paying attention to everything all the time. Think of yourself as their curator, if you will, and you're looking to find things that match with them, even if it's possible they saw it. As long as you say, in case you missed it, they're not going to think you're stupid and you don't know what's going on. So again, contextualize. One group we worked with created a stewardship spreadsheet and gathered all the internal resources the fundraiser team to use. So if you've got somebody on your team who's really good at that stuff, let them have at it so that you have a resource. Make sure you have a common folder on your SharePoint or OneDrive or whatever you use where you guys are popping ideas in there. On the Veritas team, we have a folder called resources, and in that is a subfolder of touchpoint ideas. When we see good stuff, we pop it in there. And then if I'm talking with a client, they say, have you ever seen anything about blah, blah, blah? I go there and I can often find something and say, here's a good example. So do that internally. Be intentional about collaboration with your be intentional about collaboration within your major gift team, within your mid-level team, and your plan giving team, and then all of you coming together from time to time. Schedule brainstorming sessions in the summer, and then get together at least quarterly from September to May. You guys have different responsibilities, but you're all relationship managers, and one idea, one place can really be powerful with the other parts of the team. So make sure you're stewarding your everything you're doing across the teams, and it's a multiplier effect. So that's that whole part. Now, this next section, hold on to your bootstraps. We're going to talk about transformational gifts. And a transformation is a relative thing to the size of your organization, and it might be what's transformational for the donor. So a donor, $100,000 gift might be transformational. The organization, it might be 3 million. So think about what you mean when you're saying transformational, and they both are valid. Helping a donor to make a transformational gift within their economy of scale, and helping a donor make a transformational gift within the economy scale of your organization. But what we want you to do, what we always recommend, is always think in terms of 3 to 5 donors, and you're rolling through 3 to 5 donors. You think there's potential. You don't know that it's going to happen this year. It might be next year, year ever. We're not talking about 25 years from now. We're talking about things you can work on in near term. So let's talk about some of the things people get wrong. I think the number one is people say, we don't have those kind of donors, Diana. We just don't. We're too small. We're too whatever. That's probably what we hear the most is nobody can give at this level. Our organization is different. Maybe your donors have never given a large gift. That doesn't mean they can't or they won't if you're able to bring them an offer that's aligned with their interests. So keep an open mind and don't make up stories about your donors or what they can and can't do, what they do or do not want to do. It's also common for fundraisers to assume that their community is just not wealthy and their donors are different and they wouldn't respond to a higher ask. As a fundraiser, again, check yourself to make sure you aren't making up these stories. You can never really know a donor's capacity or ability or desire to give unless you give them the opportunity to do it. So that's on you to bring them. And there's language you can use. We have a lot on permission-based asking. There's resources you can get from us to help you word things in such a way that the donor is engaged and you're moving through this conversation together. Just remember, in some cases, you may not be aware that the donor uses a variety of ways to give. They use their checkbook, from a donor advised fund, a community foundation, a family foundation, from their business. So you want to keep that in mind as you're looking at your potential transformational donors. Maybe they have multiple pockets, if they're buckets, if you will, to use. They might not be using them all with you, but through some research, you can find out they have them. Something we also unfortunately see is fundraisers don't have the systems, resources, or offers that can bring a donor a larger offer. So there might be internal fear about bringing some project to somebody, or I'm talking with somebody right now, they're looking to launch a brand new podcast and they have this kind of fear, like, should we bring that to a donor? What if the thing doesn't happen? Then we'll have egg on our face. So there's a way to engage the donor and go through that conversation. But there are donors who would probably fund the whole first year of that if the gift officer wouldn't hold himself back by dreaming. You're inviting a donor to dream with you, right? So when you start considering transformational giving with donors, you need to remember that securing a transformational gift requires a strong relationship with the donor. You're not going to be doing this if you don't know the donor yet. I realize every now and then you hear about that Bluebird $5 million gift from somebody nobody knew. Those are extremely rare. Those don't happen very often at all. So focus on these donors where you could get there. You need to have a two-way relationship already, and you need to be building trust with that donor and the organization. It's not just you and the donor, it's their trust in the organization. Donors are not going to make a significant gift to an organization they don't trust. So if they don't believe you're executing the work, or if they think something's funny about the leadership, or they just don't like how there's been turnover, those are all problems that you need to be addressing as you're building these relationships. Now, lastly, you need to make sure you're working closely with program and finance to ensure that the gift that the donor makes will actually be used effectively to make an impact. You don't want to pursue a transformational gift if you're unsure that the organization can use that gift. Meeting these criteria takes time because building strong relationships and trust takes time. Transformational gifts do not happen overnight. If you have someone on your caseload with the capacity to make a transformational gift, that's not so easy to say. Yeah. You want to make sure you're identifying their passions and interests and working diligently on that trust issue. I know I've said it a lot, but it's important. So before we move on, I want to caution you real quick about wealth ratings. First, we're not against them, but they represent one data point, one. An NGO I'm working with right now has a donor that was giving $50,000 a year for 3 years, 3 or 4 years maybe. In 2023, that donor agreed to an $800,000 gift over a few years. Pretty big jump. And then early in 2024, they agreed to a $3 million gift over 4 years, wrapping in their previous commitment. So the annual giving grew from $50,000 to $150,000 to $750,000 came in the door just like last week. And the couple said they're not done. Do you want to guess what the wealth rating said this couple can give? 13,000.
Really?
13,000, and they were already giving 50,000. So you might be saying, how the heck did that happen? That's because ratings don't see all the capacity. If there's a donor advised fund or a family foundation in the mix or other ways that they can give, that capacity is obscured. So wealth ratings can help you prioritize, but please, please, please don't think they are the be all and end all. We're not against them, but they are one data point. One data point. So let's think about the donor offer part of this. You can't really go for a transformational gift if you don't have an offer to bring your donor that they can dream with you about and see a different future as a result of this thing that you're doing. Or even if the transformational gift is about underwriting current operating costs, so other things can be done with funds that come in. There's a lot of ways to approach that. In our approach, a donor offer includes the direct costs and the overhead. There is not one thing you all do without overhead. You can't run a summer program if you can't turn the lights on or run the water. You can't have a theater performance if you can't vacuum those carpets and replace those chairs from time to time. Your donors need to be specific, and your donor offers need to be specific and aligned with the donor's passions and interests. You and your leadership need to collaborate and work with finance and program to be able to break down the program needs and compelling offers that we have that have a believable solution with a specific price tag. Veritas, we do have a lot of information on this. And again, this is stuff Rebecca can pop in the chat, or you can go onto our website and look for white papers as well. So how do you plan for a transformational gift? And I know we're getting toward the end and I'll try to go faster. Look for donors that currently give 2 to 3 times more than the average major gift in your file. That's one starting part. Next, create a 24 to 36 month strategic plan. You normally work on a 12-month plan, but these people, you want to think, these 3 to 5 donors, you want to think 24 to 36 months out to get to where you want to go. Throughout the process, you'll continue to ask. You don't want to wait 3 years to ask for the $1 million gift. You should be asking the 100,000 or whatever it is in between. Like the example I gave you, the 50 to the, I've already forgot the numbers, but up to 3 million. Those were incremental, right? Throughout the process, you, as I said, keep asking for those gifts. It's going to build trust that you are using the money, the investment well, And it's building kind of a momentum, if you will. Remember, there will be no transformational gifts without showing the impact of their current giving. So don't stop talking about the impact now while you're working toward the future. You want to show you're a good steward of the gifts they've been giving. You want to engage the donor beyond giving money. How can you make this donor feel like they have a seat at the table? Not just make them feel. How do you give this donor a seat at the table that's meaningful to them and is workable for your organization, right? You don't want to promise stuff that's useless. They don't want to spend their time coming to a meeting if everything they say has no impact. So make sure that you can engage them genuinely on that. Finally, be prepared with a transformational gift plan. What does this gift look like for them? How is it structured? Come prepared with those kinds of details and be prepared to be flexible. Now, the next two slides are actual transformation plans. You might want to take a screenshot of this one. And when Jeff goes to the next one,
they'll get these slides.
Yeah, you'll get them. But the point is, both of these were a plan over time. And this one that Jeff has up now, I do want to spend a little bit of time on, because this is a case where a donor gave to one thing or two things. And it's over the course of this time period that the gift officer was really listening. And so it started, he had been giving some scholarship funds before. He cared mostly about students, Indigenous students. And he was an athlete, so he cared about athletics. So those things were going on. He was asked to fund a field house renovation. He agreed to do it. And this goes through the whole year of various different things that this is a real plan the gift officer did during the course of that time, reporting back on scholarship pledges made, getting them to the opening of when the field house was unveiled and all that sort of stuff. And in the midst of this, remember, scholarships, athletics, in the midst of this, the gift officer said, hey, I know these are your primary interests. There's something that we're working toward to endow, I think if I remember this right, endow a faculty research program. I know that this is you took a course in this field or something along those lines. Is this something you're open to? And he was. And they were moving toward a multi-million-dollar gift on this faculty research. See, you could have a story in your head. Oh, they're a scholarship person. Oh, they're an athletic person. Oh, they're this, oh, they're that. Keep bringing the fullness of what you do, contextualizing it. And that's where he discovered halfway through this, there's a real opportunity here with this donor because of what they care. This is a university. They are passionate about the university. And it turns out there was a whole lot that they were passionate about, not just what was thought. So that's my time. Back to you, Jeff.
Okay. So we are getting close to the end here. Taking a break. I'm not going to go into this. We have we've done so many blogs on why you as a fundraiser need to take a break so that you don't burn out. Take your vacation time. That's the big thing. And that's how you also avoid burnout. So take your vacation and you can avoid the burnout that many folks are experiencing in the nonprofit space. So please, we know this is a busy time of year. This is why you want to do the planning, but also during the summer, take a break. During the fall, even block some time out for yourself. You'll have to do that. Okay. So let me ask you, if you were offered an opportunity to learn a system and structure that would allow you to have an impact and meaningful connections with your donors during the summer and all year long, would you be interested in that? That's good, because we are offering our next certification course for major gift fundraisers on June 10th. And these courses have it all and will provide a comprehensive training on the system and structure you can implement to not just create a qualified caseload, but manage your caseload and create meaningful relationships with your donors in an effective way. And of course, for fundraising leaders, it gives you all the tools and resources you need to successfully manage your major gift program and support your fundraisers on your team. Here's a note from a Veritas Group Academy alumni about the value of this information. And basically what Suzanne is saying is that going through VGA has helped her not only create the system and structure she can rely on, but it continues to help her stay focused on the mission and the organization. So if you're looking to grow your major gift program or take your work with donors to the next level, this is a course you don't want to miss. And if you want to get $200 off of our upcoming course, which starts June 10th, go to veritasgroup.com/courses and select certification courses for major gift fundraisers or certification course for managers and executives, and use our coupon code SUMMER200 on the registration page. So now we have 5 minutes to be able to go through questions. So let's see the best that we can do, Rebecca.
I know we left you guys so much time. I appreciate how much content you all just gave. So lots of comments thanking you both throughout, just for the refresher, for the good reminders, for the important context going into the summer. So I know that some of the questions we've answered, and I see that Diana has answered some as well. But we did have a question just thinking about communication when you're new to the role. So you're starting into the summer, year-end is really important. How do you structure some of your initial conversation and communication to donors when you're maybe new to that caseload? So Diana, I would love for you to start with that and then get Jeff's feedback.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I saw that Carrie answered a little bit in the chat or in the Q&A section herself. Step one is definitely look into the record to see what's already known. It's nothing more exhausting for a donor to be asked the same exact questions again and again and again, as if that was the first time anyone ever thought of that. That said, when you do have that first conversation, you can bring up things, I know from my former colleagues' notes they took, he indicated that these are things that you're interested in. Is that still true? Like, you don't want to assume it's gospel because it's in the CRM, but you don't want to exhaust the donor from not bringing up things that in theory you should know. Not in theory, you should know, because your organization's already invested time in this relationship. So it could be as simple as, if you're new and you're inheriting this, we actually did a whole webinar on inheriting a caseload, but you inherited a donor, you can start with an email and say, I just joined the team. I know that you had a strong relationship with Joe. I'd love to connect with you. Are you open to a phone conversation or a meeting? That kind of thing. So that can be what you do. And you can start with your basic, what we call an introductory call structure. Sometimes it's called discovery questions, but have questions to introduce yourself to that person. And what you want to make sure there's alignment, that what the organization believes to be true of this donor is in fact true or still true. So hopefully that addresses that. It's not as difficult as it might seem. And you get to play the new card, which is always fun.
Absolutely. So just because of time, I'm going to answer one more question, but we will also try to reach back out to everyone. And you can always ask your questions in our community hub, which is a free space to connect with everyone around the world that has taken our courses and been a part of our community. So last question is going to be about, if I'm in the qualification process, I'm still building my caseload. I'm not necessarily in have a full caseload at this point in time. The question is, should I wait until having a fully qualified caseload to even start that planning process for a transformational gift, or can I start it while I am still qualifying to fill my caseload?
Yeah, you definitely can start now. Just because you're qualifying doesn't mean that you stop thinking about the rest of that portfolio. That's the difficult part. When you're trying to qualify a bunch of donors, you're also at the same time planning for the donors that are already qualified, and for some of them looking way ahead. So do not be afraid to start doing that.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you all so much. I'm sorry we didn't have more time for your great questions, but I hope that this was a really impactful webinar and that you got a lot of tips to be thinking about over the next few months. As a reminder, you'll be getting a recording of this webinar and a copy of the slide deck in your email tomorrow. So be on the lookout for that. And then if you do want to register for one of our upcoming courses, you can use this QR code that's on the screen. I also put the links in the webinar chat, and we'll follow up with an email so that you have the coupon code, which is SUMMER200, to get $200 off when you sign up by next Friday. If you have any other questions, or if there's any other way that we can support you, please don't hesitate to let us know, and we hope to see you in an upcoming course. Thank you so much.